Okay, this is weird. We have two high-profile AAA games, both of them reviewed well, both of them struggling to find players and sales, which has critics scratching their heads wondering why, and all the while that's happening, yet another indie game has come from the top ropes and just bodied everybody. What's really weird about this is that nobody's talking about it. You can barely find anything on this game, yet more and more people keep finding it and playing it and loving it. It's a single player, yes, a single player extraction shooter named Escape from Duckov. Can you guys guess where it got its inspiration from? This game has continued to grow day over day to the point it is now battling for the top 5 most played games on Steam, switching spots with Battlefield 6 at any given moment. A game, mind you, that was made by 5 people and cost less than $20. Are they not seeing the pattern here? I think this game highlights just how disconnected much of the industry is from its audience, especially when it comes to what kind of games to design, because these guys are just so focused on multiplayer, so focused on live service. Man, do they want that money. And all they're doing is just ignoring single player audiences and casual audiences. But you have a game like this and a team like this that discovers a far more addicting and satisfying loop by taking a game that's traditionally multiplayer and making it single player. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about why 2 major AAA games are struggling to find players right now, how the industry needs to stop ignoring the biggest player bases in the world, and how a game about ducks is a lot more than meets the eye. The more I play this game, the more I keep asking, what is this? A popular discussion that I've seen pop up recently is how 2 of the most talked about releases this season, Ninja Gaiden 4 and Outer Worlds 2, are both struggling out of the gate. These are not low-profile releases. They reviewed well. Both of them landed in the mid to high 80s on Metacritic, and yet Ninja Gaiden 4 only peaked at 11,000 concurrent players on Steam, while Outer Worlds barely cleared 10,000 in early access, 3,000 less than Avowed, which could foreshadow an even weaker launch for that game and some serious fallout for that studio. When someone asked what went wrong, I summed it up on Twitter saying, fun fact, if you bought all of the biggest releases in the past 2 months, you would have spent almost $700. Just the AAA ones, $420. Just the indies and remasters, less than $100. Players cannot survive these prices or the volume of these games. Neither will these companies. The real problem that we're running into is that all these publishers stack their release calendars trying to dodge out on Grand Theft Auto 6, and now they're all just colliding with one another. Too many games, too close together, all costing far more than anyone can justify because, I mean, let's be honest, nobody's going to be picking up $6, $70 games in 2 months. Most people are going to grab 1, maybe 2, and that's about it. Adding another one on top of that just doesn't make any financial sense, especially when every single launch is feeling like a gamble on whether or not it's good or whether or not it even works at all. I mean, it's not like people are buying these games based off of critic scores. Critic scores don't matter. People don't trust them anymore. There's too much built-in bias, too much inconsistency. These scores rarely reflect the real quality of the game, so when something launches, these players are going in blind, and when they're already strapped for cash, it's not like they're going to take a risk unless that game is affordable and it's something they are absolutely sure is fun. The only assurance that exists for a lot of players today is seeing it for themselves or hearing from friends. And that's exactly how we ended up here with yet another indie game blowing up out of nowhere despite all of these high-profile games failing. Escape from Duckov is a single-player spin on Escape from Tarkov. It launched back on October 16th with around 30,000 players, and at the time of recording this video, it has already passed over 300,000 players with no signs of slowing down. Those are numbers that we usually see for multiplayer hits, not single-player games, but this game is breaking every expectation. I swear, this is one of the most deceptive, accessible, and absurdly well-built games I have ever played. Despite how it looks, every single system in this game feels like it was assembled with surgical precision. The shooting, the looting, the pacing, it all lines up perfectly. The extraction and discovery loops are some of the most satisfying that I've ever seen in what's usually a multiplayer format. At its core, the game is basically Escape from Tarkov, but it's the way that you always wish that it would play. You start out with one NPC at your base that gives you tutorial quests. You then drop into the first area, hunt for loot, fight off enemies, gather materials, food, water, building supplies, everything you need to be able to expand your base. As you finish the quest for that first NPC, you start finding others out in the world. Back at base, you're building crafting benches and shops, which unlock even more NPCs, and suddenly they're all giving you their own quest lines. Every one of them is feeding into your exploration, what you can craft, what you can buy, and how strong your character becomes. Crafting and gunplay feels shockingly good for something that's basically a top-down twin-stick shooter. Weapons have real spread, recoil, fire rate, and damage values, all of which can be modified with attachments. Earlier fights are rough, brutal even in some cases, but as you learn the rhythms, how to dodge, when to take cover, what enemies you can rush, and which ones you can avoid, it all starts to click. If you die, you can always get one shot to go and recover your gear on the next run, and even if you lose that, well, that's fine. There's a safety net, boxes at the start of each raid that are stocked up with basic weapons to make sure that you never feel defenseless. Now, something that I really love is that as you continue to play the game, you're going to earn experience and materials that you're going to be able to spend on trainers. These guys let you unlock skill trees and passive upgrades that boost your base stats, making the earlier zones easier while still keeping those late game areas tense and punishing. It nails that power fantasy so well, that feeling of growth without ever losing any of its edge. Exploration. Now, that's something that completely blindsided me. It pulls straight from Dark Souls. As you push deeper into some of these zones, you're going to find keys, and those keys are going to unlock permanent shortcuts, doorways, and extractions. You can blow open new pathways with explosives or activate teleporters to link areas together. The more you explore, the easier it becomes to navigate, and the more the game just continues to open up. I swear this game is like a nesting doll of content. Every layer hides another one behind it. Every single system is feeding into the next. At first, I thought the entire thing was just limited to the starting zone, maybe 1 or 2 areas at max. I hit the warehouse area and figured, okay, that's probably the end, but no, then I unlocked the farm town, a zone that is easily 5 times as large as the last, filled with roaming bosses, armored enemies. And then I got murdered by an arcade machine. And then I realized there's still 2 more zones after this. I just sat there thinking to myself, how big is this game? I am 20 hours in and I feel like I have barely scratched the surface. I'm just sitting here in disbelief. I just don't get it. The design of this game is so deliberate. Every piece of it, the way that you upgrade, the way that exploration flows, how attachments meaningfully change your weapons, how your weapon choice changes your playstyle, how loot placement starts to make sense the longer that you play. Every single system feels so intuitive, layered, and deliberate. 1 minute, I'm clearing rooms feeling like I'm a god. The next, I'm hiding behind a wall, clinging to my own life, praying that I don't lose everything, and then I probably do anyway. The difficulty that you would expect from a game like this is absolutely there, but it never feels punishing. The entire game scales so naturally, and when you fail, it's still fun to climb back, unlike Tarkov. Extraction shooters really haven't broken through yet, even though this industry seems convinced that they are the next big thing. I definitely don't think they are. Tarkov might be popular, but it's still niche, and to be honest with you, much of that is still self-inflicted. The cheating problems, the broken promises, the rug-pulled features quietly moved into pricier editions, it's ridiculous. Their whole monetization model is basically just selling quality of life back to the player, extra stash space, better trader reputation, access to more of the game, prices that are ranging anywhere from $50 to $250. None of it essential, all of it fueled by greed. But beyond that, I don't think that extraction shooters mix well with casual audiences. They punish anybody who has a job. If you only have a few hours a week, if you die, lose everything, it's going to take you weeks to recover. Meanwhile, the players who are still playing the game keep getting stronger, widening the gap until the wipe resets everything all over again. It's just so damn exhausting. I feel like Duckov is the Tarkov that I've always wanted, and it was only for under $20. The lack of multiplayer in this game is not a flaw. I think it's the reason why this game works. By stripping out the competitive pressure, they made this entire genre more accessible, more satisfying, and replayable in a way that Tarkov and none of these other games ever will. And I really think that this game is cracked into something that the rest of the industry has slept on. Everybody is chasing competition, chasing live service, chasing permanence in this industry. And in doing that, they forgot the simplest part. These games are supposed to be fun to play, not exhausting to survive. I really think that this game is tapped into something special because back when I first bought Escape from Tarkov, the PvE side of the game is what sold me on it. That's what I was looking forward to the most. I guarantee there's a lot of other people that feel that way, and it took a long time for it to come out, and when it finally did, well, they shoved it into the Unheard Of edition. The only thing unheard of was how much of a ripoff that was because they got rid of the Edge of Darkness edition and pretended like they never promised us anything in the first place. Fuck you, Nikita, and I cannot wait to see you try to pull that bullshit on Steam. Now, here I am getting exactly what I wanted from this game, and I'm getting it for a fraction of the price. It's far more accessible, fun, and it's not even close to as exhausting. And I mean that on both fronts. I mean that both on the gameplay side, but also on the price side. I brought up how you would spend over $400 on new releases. That was just me talking about the most high-profile ones. There was a ton of games that I left off that list. It would easily total up over $700. Nobody can afford that. Not right now, probably not ever. There's just too many games in too high a frequency at too high of a price. And while some of these games are going to succeed, more and more of them are going to fail. And I think that we're seeing that right now. Look at all the positive reception that you're seeing around Ninja Gaiden or Outer Worlds 2, but it's not moving the needle. People aren't buying the game. $70 requires you to think about these games in a lot of cases. And right now, the players are thinking, I'll wait for a sale, or they're just not going to buy the game at all. Now, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but when you have a game that is only $18, you can now, without hesitation, listen to one of your friends recommend you the game, or you can see the game online, you can see it in a YouTube video, and you can go buy that game without even thinking about it, regardless of how niche that game is or how goofy it looks on the outside. Now, what I find really interesting about this entire situation is that with all the success that this game has already achieved, with the audience that it's captured, there is near media silence across the board when it comes to this game. Nobody is talking about it. The only outlets that I have seen are discounting and they're backhand discounting the game's success because the people that first supported it and the people that made it are Chinese. We have seen this exact scenario play out before. Back when Black Myth Wukong launched, it broke Steam records. It sold 10 million copies in its first week, yet every major headline ran with the same qualifier. It's a major hit, but in China, which always felt like it was just downplaying the game's success. I never understood why this was relevant. When a Western game blows up, nobody stops and points out that its players are mostly American. I have always been of the mind that players are players regardless of where they live, which means success is success no matter where it happens. And right now, we are seeing the exact same thing with Escape from Duckov. The media has largely ignored the game, and the only article that I could find that was actually covering the game in any real way came from PC Gamer in an article that was titled, "Escape from Duckov is the latest breakout Steam hit to owe its success to China." Now, to be clear, I'm not taking any issue with Lauren's coverage of the game itself. It's just how she's framing it. She ends the article by saying that it's good, that she hopes more people discover it so she has more people to talk about it with. And then she even points out that the game is more than just a meme, but she spends the entire article trying to prove that the game is only popular in China, monitoring when player counts dip to try to match them with Chinese time zones, comparing other Eastern hits like Naraka Blade Point and Delta Force, and pinpointing the disparity between reviews with 23,000 in English versus 240,000 in simplified Chinese. This is the stuff that drives me up the wall. Why does this even matter? Because even if those numbers are true, even if the game is primarily being played in China, what difference does it make? Why does it make it less relevant to you? There are still hundreds of thousands of people that are choosing to buy a weird, low-budget, single-player extraction game over the so-called biggest releases this year. That is not a regional anomaly. That is proof of demand, the same proof that we've been seeing everywhere. People wanting cheaper games that actually respect their time. When these Western outlets are framing games and framing success like this, it almost feels like they're just trying to rationalize it away. Oh, it's just China. That's what it is. Like that somehow makes it less legitimate, less applicable, or less reflective of what players want. Look at the Steam charts. There's no border on that list. There's no number that's being labeled by nationality. They're just labeled as players. And every single one of those players is a part of the same ecosystem, buying from the same store, leaving the same reviews, contributing to the same momentum. So the question here isn't why are these games doing well in China? It's why are they only doing well in China first? Why are Western players and journalists so slow to recognize and signal boost the appeal of some of these games until they've already gone global? This is not a cultural divide. This is a fake one. It's an industry that is so obsessed with marketing cycles and manufactured prestige that it can't even recognize a genuine hit when it's right in front of them. It does not matter where these players are coming from because the impact of these games doesn't stay contained. When hundreds of thousands of players start playing something in China, well, it doesn't just exist in a bubble. It floods into the global ecosystem. It shows up on the Steam charts, on trending pages, in recommendation algorithms. Western players see it climbing, they get curious, they check out the clips, and suddenly it's on everybody's radar. That's how modern discovery works now. Every game that blows up in one region automatically becomes visible everywhere else. And I think that's what makes the story so unique, and it's something that this industry is completely slept on, and it's how Duckov managed to be able to pull this off without any marketing whatsoever in the West. Black Myth Wukong, that game was heavily promoted. It was featured in showcases, plastered across social media. Duckov, on the other hand, did nothing. No ads, no influencer campaigns, no early access builds sent to creators. Its virality came entirely from Steam, from word of mouth, from player to player, from people seeing it on the charts. It's one of the purest cases of organic discovery that we've seen in years. What's weirder still is how few people are even talking about that. Outside of PC Gamer, most outlets are entirely focused on Outer Worlds 2 or a handful of Western releases, as if the most interesting story isn't the 5-person indie project that's suddenly climbing into Steam's global top 5. You would think that that's the kind of story that games media would jump on immediately. A small team, a wild concept, a game that's less than $20, and suddenly it's a global breakout hit, but instead they've completely ignored it. Maybe because it just doesn't fit into the narrative that they've built around what success is supposed to look like in this industry. I just feel like these are the kind of games and the kind of stories that actually matter right now, not just for the players, just so they can find more affordable ways to play, but also for the industry itself. It shows that originality and value can still win. They prove that success doesn't have to come from a $300 million budget or insane marketing. Covering games like this matters, not just so players can find them, but also so developers can see these games, so they can recognize that there are other avenues of success, other audiences worth serving, instead of endlessly chasing after the next Battle Royale, Souls-like, or open world game. We can all see how obsessed the industry has become with extraction shooters, but the irony is it took a 5-person indie team to do something new with that formula, to take it single player, to make it unique, more accessible, and make it more fun, and it works. It's just so satisfying, even for hardcore players, but also still keeping it approachable for anybody to be able to pick up. Meanwhile, we have every publisher right now gearing up to drop their own multiplayer extraction shooter at almost the exact same time. Marathon, Arc Raiders, and I just counted another 8 or 9 others that are waiting in the wings right now, all racing towards a market that likely isn't big enough for even one of them to succeed. Maybe I'm just projecting here, but I really do feel like audiences are the ones that are being ignored in all this. Single player audiences, and most importantly, the people who actually have jobs and responsibilities outside of video games. I went back just to see how many games I had bought while I was still working in construction. I looked at 2023, the year that I lost my job, and I had bought 3 AAA games, kinda. Baldur's Gate 3 I had already owned because I got it in early access. The other one that I had on there was Phantom Liberty, which that was just a DLC. So really that was just 2 AAA games, Hogwarts Legacy and Armored Core 6. That's it. Those are the 4 games that I had the time and the money to be able to play while I was living life like a normal human being. Alongside those, I bought 14 indie games, and those made up the majority of my playtime. Nearly everything that I had picked up was self-contained, single-player, and endlessly replayable, something that I could boot up and shut down at a moment's notice, because I never knew when I was going to get a free evening or how long that would last, and I think that that's the reality for most players today. People are not living inside these games anymore. They're living and fitting these games inside of their lives. What we're watching right now is an industry that's growing further and further out of touch with its audience and the audience that it's supposed to be serving, while these indie developers who are living the same lives as many of us and many players today are making games for themselves and by extension for everyone else. They're pricing these games for the average customer. They're building experiences that match real-world schedules and real-world limits. Meanwhile, the media is ignoring those trends because they don't fit that AAA news cycle. And these publishers are doubling down on their mistakes, sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into projects that the average person just can't afford, won't have the time to finish, and these games are being designed against their lifestyle instead of with it. Lifestyle games. Now, that's a topic for a future video. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the games industry has become obsessed with that, especially at a executive level. They've been trying to manifest the need into existence, believing that everybody wants these forever games, games that you can live inside, games that become your lifestyle. But when 60% of your audience is working adults, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense now, does it? It really does upset me that a lot of these Eastern games do not get a fair shake from the media in general, from the industry in general, because it does a lot of harm. It makes it where we have a harder time finding great games. It makes it more difficult for us to find more affordable games, but it also makes it where their issues in some of these games are not being discussed on a global scale. It means that these developers are not able to see these games, learn from their mistakes and their successes, and I think a lot of it just comes from a lack of access These guys don't like having a lack of access, and China really does not like the way that the media likes to frame things. And, well, the media does not like that. I can see Escape from Duckov doing really well. I can see it continuing its success from where it is right now. I mean, the game has continued to hit highs basically every single day for the last week or so. And if it does continue to do that, and it does break into some of the Western audiences, I think that they have solid proof here, solid proof of concept that people might have this whole extraction shooter thing, the entire formula, wrong. And maybe it actually works better in a situation like this, where it's a single player focused game, and that's where it stays. Now, I definitely could see it breaching outside of that, maybe bringing in some PvP elements on the side, something that is not required. Maybe it has some new loot or some exclusive loot that are in those PvP areas, giving players the option to go do those kind of things. I think that's where the future of live service really is. I think it's that blend of single player and multiplayer, but the multiplayer is always a option. It's not something that you're required to do. It's not the entire identity of the game. I like being able to do something on my own, and in some of these games, it would feel good to be able to take that into a multiplayer situation and potentially get more rewards or whatever it is. People do want to interact with other players, but in a lot of cases, they want to do it on their own time. You know, there's millions, there's probably billions of dollars at this point that's riding on extraction shooters, breaking into global audiences, and I just don't see it working just by the nature of those games. How quickly that floor and ceiling separate from one another when you have players that can only play a couple hours a week, and you have players that can play every hour of the day. The other guys are never going to be able to catch up. If they get their wings clipped, they're probably out for the entire season or the entire wipe or whatever you're going to do for whatever your game is. And that's just going to drive people away. While it might be popular on a niche scale, it's definitely not going to be popular on a wide scale. I'll tell you that right now. I think Arc Raiders might have a chance. I like how they're trying to lean harder into making PvE more difficult. So then it's kind of driving players away from doing too much PvP because that's too much of a risk. It's making people allies more than enemies in some cases. I've experienced that myself when I've played some of their playtests, and I've seen other people have a similar experience as well. But I still think that like streamer culture and people trying to make a career out of their gameplay is going to still drive that PvP element of it and just ruin it for any casual player. So we'll see.